In boxing, when you know, you know.
The body and went upstairs.
Nice thought. Are just thudded. He is right hand landed. Another right hand. Herrera's out.
Catches Connor with a big right hand, and he is down. And he got caught again by Kavaliauskas on that exchange.
I know. Okay, so before we go forward and we break down Vergil Ortiz versus Egis Kavaliauskas, I want to go over some boxing news that broke today, which is that Spence has pulled out of the Manny Pacquiao fight due to an injury that he sustained in his left eye. And I heard reports between a partially torn retina or a fully torn retina, which is a big deal. This is a very serious injury that he sustained. And unfortunately for us boxing fans, the fight of the summer is now off. Dennis Ugas, which is a top flight welterweight, has stepped in. He was supposed to fight on the undercard, but he is now taking the place of Spence against Manny Pacquiao. But let's get the initial selfish emotions out the way. Let's put ourselves aside as fanatics. Let's wish Spence a speedy recovery in a very serious injury, especially for him who's coming off a car accident in which his body has taken a lot of damage already. I'm not a doctor, nor am I going to play doctor or pretend to diagnose Spence and understand the situation. This procedure is not a light one. He will likely be out of the ring, and I mean just from training purposes, for at least a month. He may not be able to get back into the ring post-procedure till October. And I'm just talking about hitting the mitts or hitting the bag and doing any strenuous activity. In terms of him receiving contact on the left eye, that may be a whole different timeline. And that just depends on the severity of the tear. We don't know. I don't know the full details. It sucks that we don't get the fight, but it sucks even more for Spence and his camp, and I just wish him a speedy recovery. He said he'll be back and fight the winner. I don't see Spence coming back till about February, March. But let's get back to the fight that we're here to talk about, which is Vergil Ortiz versus Mean Machine Egis Kavaliauskas. Most times, we can't predict sports. We have no idea what's going to be the outcome of a sporting event. And I'm not here trying to say that we know the outcome of this one. But there are some times where we know, for the most part, the product that we're about to receive. Sometimes when fights are announced, all I need to know are the two names in it. And the rest doesn't matter. I don't care about hype videos or training camp episodes and follow the fighters. I mean, I love it. I'll eat it up and I'll watch it. Trust me. But I don't need those things for this type of fight. And let me break down to you why. This is a Fight of the Year candidate. Us hardcore boxing fans know this. By the way, this is taking place this Saturday, August 14th on DAZN. Vergil Ortiz, he's the blue chip prospect. He's the anointed next best thing at the welterweight division. 23-year-old, extremely young, 17 fights into his career, all by way of knockout. And yes, he's undefeated. He is of Mexican descent. And he's a knockout artist. He has all the ingredients and the recipe to become the next superstar. Then he is fighting Egis Mean Machine. He is of Lithuania, I believe, and he's 33 years old. But the reason he's a little older than usual, most of these Eastern European guys stay in the amateur system for a very long time. Both guys are extremely hard punchers. Both guys are knockout artists. I mentioned earlier that Vergil Ortiz is 17-0 with 17 knockouts. Egis Kavaliauskas is 23. 1 loss, 1 draw, 18 of those 23 coming by knockout. If we look at it as a collective, that equals to 41 fights. 36 are won by knockout. I'm not a math genius, but that's about 88, 89% knockout ratio. That is the percentage that I am guaranteeing you that this fight will end in a stoppage. I don't need to go any further than the numbers. Now let's go to them stylistically. Both are aggressive, offensive-minded fighters. Both whom are accustomed to being the hardest puncher there in the ring with. But one thing that I think is not going spoken about is both guys at one point in time were trained by Robert Garcia. They had RG training, right? Robert Garcia, one of the most famous boxing trainers there is right now. He's still currently the trainer of Vergil Ortiz, but he was once the trainer of Egis Kavaliauskas. All I'm saying is that Robert Garcia has had his hands on Egis Kavaliauskas from a training perspective. That is the same guy that will be in the corner with Vergil Ortiz, giving him tips on strengths and weaknesses throughout training camp and in the fight. So what does this fight mean for Vergil Ortiz? For Vergil Ortiz, this represents the most dangerous fighter he's been in the ring with. Maybe not the best fighter. I think Maurice Hooker was a bit more of a complete fighter, especially when it came to championship rounds and experience. He was a 140 pounder. He should never belong at 147, which is where he fought Vergil Ortiz at. So he was way too small for the division, and he was never considered a big puncher even at 140. It was evident in the fight that Vergil Ortiz had very little regard for the power of Maurice Hooker, especially in the way he took him out. Egis looks like a big welterweight, just like Vergil is, and he's a monster puncher. So this represents the most dangerous fight that he will have in terms of the consequences. This is a fighter, he will be in a ring with a fighter who very easily has the potential to put him to sleep. I don't think Vergil has had that, even in his harder fights with Mauricio Herrera, Antonio Orozco, Maurice Hooker. I don't think he's ever been in the ring with someone that really legitimately had a good chance of putting him to sleep. Egis does represent that, which segues me into what does this fight mean for Egis. This fight means for Egis the hardest test he's had, not named Terrence Crawford. And I mean that exactly. Vergil is not Terrence Crawford, at least not yet, which is a good thing for us because I genuinely believe the fight will be more competitive than the fight he had with Terrence. He will be given the chance to dethrone or spoil what everyone thinks is the next big thing at welterweight. So let's get into my prediction. My prediction is that this fight is actually going to start slow. Both of these guys know what the other is going to do. Both of these guys know that they both come forward knockout artists. In fact, they've said in interviews, I know he's coming to knock me out, and he knows I'm coming to knock him out. I think the fight will actually start slow for the first round until the first clean hit lands. And doesn't matter who it is. When someone gets clipped or hurt or punched or stunned, they always revert to who they are as a fighter. Who you are as a fighter comes out because you have less time to think. You have less processing time because you are now stunned, hurt, and you have to defend yourself the best way you know how to. Boxers tend to box and punchers tend to punch. This will be high-speed chess with missiles. Every punch delivered by each of these fighters will have grave consequences, either to the person delivering it or the person on the receiving end of it. If you land, there's a chance that your opponent goes down and goes to sleep. If you miss and overcommit, there's a good chance that the counter will put you to sleep. And those are the type of fights that will have you on the edge of the seat. Vergil, being young and brash, I do think his aggression and his youth will get him into trouble, and he's likely going to get stunned or buzzed and maybe even drop. And at some point, he's going to have to bite down on that mouth guard to walk through the fire that is Egis and Mean Machine in order to deliver his own artillery. The same youth and impulsiveness that got him into trouble likely throughout the fight will be what prevails at the end. I do think at 33 years old, Egis has peaked. I don't think he's in decline, but he has peaked. This is as good as he's going to be. Meanwhile, Vergil is only 23 and he's ascending. And just because we've never seen him use his defense because he's never had to, he may have that in his bag. And his offense, at least his offense, does seem more dynamic. And Vergil will have a second win and jump on Egis that will lead to an 8th-round stoppage. I promise you, this fight will deliver, if not fight of the year moments. If you're just a casual fan, please tune in. If you're a boxing head or you're a hardcore, you're tuning in. But if you're interested in boxing, even if you're just like a YouTuber fan, watch this fight. This is how it's done, and enjoy.